Hello everyone, my name is Andrew. Today we'll continue learning Python, and today we'll continue with our Django logging setup. So in the previous video we talked about why do we need logging, what is logging, how it works in Django, and now we're going to continue with improving our logs and improving our logging inside of our Django application. So let's start. The two ideas that we're gonna talk about today is, first of all, JSON logging, or any formatted logging, if I can say it like that, formatted logging. And second of all, we're going to talk about logging systems. So why do we need JSON logging systems? And third of all, we're going to talk about different logical loggers, as I call them. So those are the three ideas that we're going to discuss. I said two ideas in the first place, but yeah, logging systems and JSON logging are pretty close to each other. So let's just start with that. Whenever we work with our applications in 2021, we don't use, I know, something like grep, find, if you know what I'm talking about. So whenever we look at our logs, we can't just simply look through a file. So we can just simply find the error, so find what happened for that period of time, why did it happen, when did it happen. We can just simply look through our logs. Why is that? Because in 99% of the cases, you have tons of logs in your application. So if you're talking about Django, simple Django project, nothing was set up. We have GET requests or any HTTP requests. So GET, POST, PUT, anything. We also have our SQL requests. So requests that go to our database. Typically, we will not log every SQL request inside of our Django application because we have databases and each database provides its own logging support. But there are tons of things that we need to log in nowadays application, and because of that we can just simply look through our logs manually. So we can just simply use something like grep in Linux, we can just simply use something like tail in Linux, head in Linux. I don't know if we have tail. I think we have grep here. No, we don't have grep in Windows. Well, but if you know what I mean, so you can just simply use commands, or you can use UI to search for some log entries, log records inside of your files. And because of that, what we are using are special systems that allow us to work with our logs. So the examples of those systems are Splunk, Elastic systems. So you can go to elastic.co website and you'll see some programs that will allow you to really look through your logs, to filter your logs, and to do some amazing stuff with your logs, with your observability, security, and all that stuff. We'll set up Elastic, or how do you call it, ELK. So ELK, something like that. I think Elastic log stash Kibana. So we'll set up that in the future, and I'll show you how you can really manage your logs in the UI. Because basically, what we want to do with our logs is we want to simply see the representation or the state of our program. And whenever we want to find an error, we don't want to really do it manually. We want a program. In our case, it can be something like Elastic, one of the Elastic products, because yeah, that company has like 12 products and I can't remember all of the names. We can have something like Splunk. We can have something like, I don't know, maybe just a simple program which was written by our company. We can have something like Azure Insights. So there are tons of tools for you to use, but what you need to understand is that you will never ever use your logs manually. In some cases you can, but typically it's better to have an application that will collect your logs and will analyze your logs and give you the representation of your application. But we'll set up that in the next video. But for now, what we need to understand is that each of those applications, each of those tools, so Azure Insights, AVS, I don't know what they use, but some stuff in AVS Cloud, some stuff in Google Cloud that allows us to collect our logs, they all use different formats. So different formats are used inside of our logs. And what we can do, there are two basic ways of how we can create our formats. And first of all, what we can do is just go to main formatter and change anything there. So what we can do is something like ask time equals. That will be our own format. And we created that format in the previous video. But 99% of those applications can work with JSON. So, no, I'll not remove it, but 99% of those applications can work with JSON logging. And JSON logging is very cool. Why is that? JSON, I think you all know about that, is a simple language that or markup language. What is JSON? Object notation language, I think. Yeah, JavaScript object notation language. I don't know. So JSON, you all know about JSON. It's a very simple language that allows you to really contain some data inside of simple structures of JavaScript programming language. And JSON is supported by any programming language there is. So you can find anything like C, maybe even assembler has some JSON. Assembler definitely does not have JSON, but 99% of the languages support JSON. And we as programmers all know JSON. So each programmer or every programmer knows JSON very well. And whenever we talk about any application that we're gonna write that will help us to collect those logs, so whenever we talk about logging systems, as I can call them, we want those systems to be able to understand that that is the time. Info is a level, views is a module, hello from Django is a message, and JSON is a very great way of doing that. So what we're gonna create? We're gonna create a logger that will use that format. So something like date, something like timestamp. Then it's gonna be our timestamp. Then we're gonna create something like our level, and it's gonna be our level. We're gonna create something like module. It's gonna be our module, and message, which is gonna be the message of our application. So that is all of the things that we are gonna create for now. And yeah, we're just gonna copy and paste the same entries, so the same log records each time. So if we can see it like that, then you already see that it's much better in terms of formatting, in terms of the understanding of those logs, because we can have keys for our values and we can have tons of additional things like everything you can think of in JSON. So you can have levels, you can have timestamp, which is a list of like year. You can have anything that is supported by JSON. That is very powerful. But typically you have very simple JSON objects because that is not something like a database. That's just a logging, and you need your logging to be very simple and yeah, but still very powerful. So we are going to set up that logging format right now. So there are two ways of doing that. First of all, what we can do is use all of those keys. So we can write the same things here. So I need to change the format for something like %, or I think that. And we're going to create something like message. So message keys, we're going to write them manually. But there is a better way of doing that. And that way is called libraries. So yeah, libraries in Python. What you can do is go to the web and search for Python JSON logger. So there are tons of libraries for JSON formatting in Python, but I'm using that Python JSON logger library. I think it's the best one in the existence, but yeah. And for some logging systems, by the way, so if we were talking about logging systems like Azure Insights, Elasticsearch, Splunk, they all have their own libraries. So what we can do is literally write Django log stash logging, something like that. And then yeah, Django log stash logger, as you can see it right here. And that logger will allow you to immediately put your custom formatting for that application. So log stash is like a thing that collects your logs. And there are tons of libraries for each of the tools that you're going to use. But for now, we're not using any tools, and we just want to use our format as a JSON. And because of that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Python JSON logger. We're going to install it with our terminal. Pip install Python JSON logger, and what we can do here is see integrated with Python logging framework. And as you can see, they are using logging, and Django uses logging as well. But Django uses a dictionary representation of logging configuration. Here they are using like normal objects, and the only thing that we need to look for here is JSON logger.json formatter, because basically the only thing that we need to change is our formatters, and that is the power of logging. So you have different objects that use different ideas and are responsible for different things, like formatters format stuff, handlers show you where you put your stuff and what format are you using, and loggers log things. Very powerful. And if you want to use that JSON formatter, what we can do is import or from Python JSON logger, I install that library .json logger, import JSON formatter. And let's go to the loggers once again. And here, instead of using style and format keys as we did before, what we can do is use a string and a key as parentheses. So that means that we're going to use the class that is a formatter for our. So we are going to use a pre-created formatter. In our case, we're going to just apply Json Formatter here. Let's run our program, and if I'm going to go to my test view once again, because test view shows me like logger.info, as you can see, message hello from Django. If I'm going to go to info.logs, so yeah, those 9 logs are the ones that I created myself, but as you can see, if I refresh that page, as you can see, we receive our logs in a JSON format. But still, there is a one big mistake. So what is that mistake? You can think of it, but the mistake is that we only supply the message key. And the problem with that is that whenever we work with logging, once again, we want as many ways, not as many, but we want some ways to be able to filter our logs or our log records between each other. So I don't want to just look at the message. I want to look at the level, module, log ID, log timestamp, log application, log node, log server group, and something like that. So there are tons of things that we can add to our logs. And basically, what we can do with Json Formatter is we can create our own formatter in a new file. So Json Formatter is a perfect way. What we can do here is, by the way, provide the format ourselves, like that. So like something like message, I think it's like that, message, then S here, but what we're gonna do now is create our own formatter, and I'll show you why. So if we are gonna go to Python JSON Logger GitHub page once again, we're gonna go to customizing fields, not to customizing fields, but to, customizing fields, and here we have our custom JSON formatter. And we're going to use that class in order to create our custom format for our logs. So what we're going to do is in Django YouTube or in your general folder. So general folder is like where your Django configuration, so your main Django folder. I'm going to create a new file called logging formatters, like that. You can create them you can call them formatters. It doesn't really matter, but I think that logging formatters is much more descriptive. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create custom JSON formatter. You can rename it as you wish, but for now I'm just going to leave it as custom formatter. And we also need to import datetime UTC for our timestamp. So like that. Okay, what do we have here? And why do we create that class? So for every JSON logging library that you're going to use, or for every logging library itself, it's going to be very different, because basically different people created those libraries. And for Python JSON Logger, what we have is add fields method inside of our JSON formatter. So add fields method allows us to add any field that we wish to our log records. So it has log record, and message dict. So I'll not explain all of them because it's like literally a library. You can read in the documentation, and probably you won't use it as often as I do. But basically what we're doing here is we add in the default fields for our logging. In our case, is just going to be a message, and then we are adding our own fields inside of those if statements. So I'm saying that if we don't have our timestamp, if log record does not have any timestamp, we add that timestamp ourselves. And here, what we can do, I hate that thing. What we can do is literally just say it like that. Why do we need to create now? It doesn't matter. Okay, so if we don't have our timestamp, we create our timestamp inside of that logger. Then we do the same with the level. So if log record has a level, then we create it as upper. But if log record has no level inside of it, so we use record.level name. Very basic stuff. So I'll not explain that, but basically what we're doing here is we are saying that, or we are adding our own fields. Log record, timestamp is our own field. Level is our own field. And whenever we want to work with any logging or log, how do you call it? With any logging system, so a system that collects logs, that parses logs, and shows you the aggregation or shows you the state of your application using logs, we wanted to use custom fields. And because of that, what we can do is literally you can add that custom JSON formatter, and then imagine that we need a field called something like environment. So production debug environment, something like that. What you can do is that log record environment equals to something like settings.debug, maybe settings debug if something like that. Or you can create something like environment equals debug here or production here. So very basic stuff, but basically you can add any field that you want using that log record. Once again, it's different for every application, but I want you to get the idea that whenever you use custom JSON formatter, you have an ability, or a custom formatter of any kind, you have an ability to add your own fields. And that is very powerful, because basically, even if your application, so even if your tool for collecting logs, analyzing logs does not have its own wrapper, so its own library for your formats, for all that stuff, you can write your formatters yourself, just using that idea that you can add any fields whenever you want. And don't forget about normal style or normal formatters, like which you create with style and other stuff that I showed you in the previous video. Just for now, we're going to use custom JSON formatter here, and let's import it. Let's go here. Let's remove our JSON formatter. We don't need it anymore. And basically what we are doing right now is we're importing our custom JSON formatter, and we are using our custom class as a formatter for our application. So let's go to our test view. I'll refresh the page, and as you can see right now, we have message, hello from Django, timestamp, which is timestamp, so the current time, and we have our level here as well. Let's just add the environment for the sake of it. So log record environment equals to something like, I don't know, Django, let it just be Django. Let's restart our application, let's refresh our page, and as you can see, environment is Django. So we can basically add any fields, and if we're going to go to info.log, you can see the last one goes with info or environment.django. That's very powerful. So that is the idea of JSON logging and formatted loggings or formatted loggers in Python. So what I want to add in addition is that JSON logging is very powerful, and like almost everybody uses it right now. But for some applications, for some cases, you are better using other types of logging, and it literally depends on your app, on your business, on your team. And yeah, that's the whole idea. But what you need to know is that JSON logging is very powerful, because you basically can use JSON logging with almost any application nowadays. But once again, for each application, you need to review what is the requirement for your logs, because if you don't have a requirement, then yeah, then just use JSON, because it's a very simple but powerful format. Okay, now we are going to use, or we are going to talk about logical loggers. So what is that? That idea is pretty unique, because yeah, I just invented it like on the spot. I used it, but it didn't have a name. So whenever we work with any logical application or any logical part in our application, so imagine that we have our application, so Django YouTube. Let me just open the paint and I'll show it to you inside of the paint. So imagine we have our application, so our big app, like app. But imagine that for some reason we have a very strong logical split in our application. So logical split goes like that, and for some reason that part may be like Django, and that part can be like project something like, yeah, project. So we have that very big logical split. What do I mean by that? If you worked with Django Celery, so what is Django Celery? Django Celery is basically an app that allows you to execute long-running tasks on different computers. So imagine that you have your Django application here, so DJ, and there is a long-running task. So, for example, your user requests you to create a report for the last 10 years. That is a very long-running task, because basically you need to execute tons of SQL queries, tons of OLAP SQL queries, and yeah, so that is basically that, yeah, very long-running task, and you don't want your client to wait on the request. So whenever your client like requests that, if you are gonna execute the task inside of that Django, what is the problem is that, first of all, your client is going to wait for like 30 minutes. That is a big problem. And if he closes your page, then basically the info is lost and he needs to request that information once again. That is the first problem. But the second problem is that if you have an application that or your web server, yeah, basically your web server does not need to execute long-running tasks. So we never work with web servers with normal web servers, like a simple application. Like imagine, a broker which has a report for the last 10 years. We don't want our application to really run very long-running queries, because basically it can be very bad. I cannot stress how bad can it be, but basically it can be very bad. And what is the approach nowadays, or like the most basic approach, is to create another computer. So those are two different computers. That computer is called long running task, LRT. And whenever we have something like a long running task on our web server, we basically send it to the long running task computer, which has tons of those long running tasks. And he basically that computer just basically executes it. So it executes it, and yeah, that's kind of the whole idea of long running task computer. When we execute it, or once we executed it, our long running task computer returns the response to the Django, and that is much better, because basically we reduce the required processing power on the Django, and we don't have a single point of failure, because LRT will run all of the, well, we have the single point of failure, but I think you know what I mean. So we reduce the required power. If something happens to LRT, our Django still works, and yeah, kind of like that. But that approach requires you to write some additional code. And whenever we talk about Django and long-running tasks, we may want to use something called Celery. It's not the best way, in my opinion, because of some things. I'll explain it in a separate video, but we can use Celery. I don't really like it right now because, for some reason, I don't really like it. But whenever we want to use Django, we can use Celery, and that is a very popular technology. So Celery allows us to run those tasks on separate computers. And whenever we talk about Celery, what we need to understand is that we will write the code of Celery inside of our Django. So we'll not have two separate projects. We will not have two separate GitHub repositories. We'll only have separate files. Like I'm going to create tasks file inside of my users. So users, tasks, products, tasks, and all of those long-running tasks are going to be inside of those files or group of files. So let's create a simple long-running task like long task. Yeah. And that task is going to sleep for that amount of time, and then it's going to return 10. So a very simple imitation of a long-running calculations. And basically what we are saying here is that whenever we want to use Celery, and if you want to look further, you can just go to that doc Celery project. So yeah, just Python Celery, and that there are tons of things that you can read about that application here. But I'm just showing you the idea of logical loggers, so Celery has nothing to do with it, except for the idea that we use Celery code inside of our Django application as well. So users, tasks, products, tasks, maybe Django YouTube tasks for some reason. And whenever we want to use Celery, you need to understand that Celery will run on a separate computer. So you will have two computers, and each computer will have a separate or a log record inside of that computer's system. And whenever we want to work with Celery, we may want to split our loggers into two parts. First of all, we're going to split our loggers into Django loggers, and second of all, into Celery loggers. So I'm going to leave the formats as a custom JSON formatter for now, but instead of just using file, I'm going to use Django file here, and instead of just info, Django info. Or you can just go django.log. Let's go django.log for now. And also, I'm going to use Celery file. So why do we want to use that? Well, basically, whenever we work with any strong split in any strong logical split in our application, so we want to really have two separate entities in our application, like Django and Celery. Those are separate from each other. We want to use those entities, and we want to distinguish different logs from different systems. And because of that, what we can do, or what is like one of the best ways for doing it in development is using separate handlers, so Django file and celery file. After that, we're gonna go to loggers, and instead of main, I'm gonna use Django logger. But let's go Django for now. Django, and I'm gonna use Django file as a handler here. So as you can see, my Django will only write to Django file and console, but my celery, or like that, okay, celery is gonna write to the celery file and celery file and console as well. So now what do we have here? What is the current state of our logging? We have two separate handlers, Django file and celery file. Console is the same because basically when we develop something, we maybe want to use the same console, but yeah, so it's just like the console. We don't want to create another stream handler for celery and for Django, because basically we have the same things in both of those handlers. So stream handler, like write to a stream, what we can create. Okay, but when we're talking about files, what we can do here is we can create Django file, which is going to be file handler for Django log file name, and celery file, which is going to be file handler for celery log file name. And yeah, we're going to use the same formatter, but in loggers, we're going to use two separate loggers, Django and celery. Django file, celery file. And both of them are having info level. And the whole idea of using that split inside of our loggers is whenever we use tasks, what we can do is use import logging, and you need to remember that whenever we want to get our logger, we use logging get logger. So inside of the places where we really want to use Django, like views.py. Views.py is a perfect example for the code that is related to Django, because views.py, like views of our web server. So what do I say, or what I'm saying here is that we only use views.py with Django. We never use them with celery. So yeah, basically like that. We all of that code is related to Django, not celery. And because of that, what we can do is actually, instead of just using main here, we can use Django like that, and then write hello from Django. But tasks is a perfect example of celery, because basically we write long running tasks inside of our tasks.py. And what we can do here is say logger equals logging.get logger from celery. As you can see, in views, I'm getting Django logger. In tasks, I'm getting celery logger. The whole idea is very, very simple. Let's write something inside of our inside of our tasks.py, something like hello from celery. Here we have hello from Django, here we have hello from celery. Very, very simple. And now let's run our application. So what we'll see as the result of that code. Let me close everything. Let me delete info.log, but as you can see, we have two files, celery.log and django.log. If I'm gonna go to test view and I'm gonna refresh that, as you can see, well, yeah, there is a little bit of a problem with using Django as a name, but yeah, basically you have all of the logs that can go from Django inside of your logger, but I'll explain that in the next video. We have what? What do we have? We have message hello from Django here. So yeah, that is our message. And as you can see, environment is Django. So yeah, message from Django, hello from Django, very, very simple message. And if I'm gonna go to celery.log, I'm not gonna see nothing, because Django logger is only related to Django file handler. But if I'm gonna go to django.log, as you can see, message hello from Django. It's very, 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 very simple. And basically that message tells us that, or those messages tell us that that Django log only uses the log records that are related to Django. And what we can do in advance is, or what we can do else, what else we can do, what else we can do is we can call long task here, like that. So long task, it's, yeah, like you need to call long task in order to see the log, because I want to see what is the result of celery logging. Let's refresh our page. Let's restart our program. As you can see, hello from Django, hello from celery. If I'm gonna go to celery.log, I'm only gonna see the log that is related to the celery code, so the celery environment. But in Django, we have all the logs that are related to Django. So that is very, very simple, but yet very powerful thing to do. Because basically what we have now is we have two separate files for two separate environments, or for two logical ideas in our application. we have Django and Celery in our application. Those ideas are very, very broad. Like we have Celery and we have Django. So yeah, pretty broad, but still those ideas can be used as logical splits or different logical ideas. So we have different entities in our application. If you have something like your API and your services, maybe you want to use the same thing for your API and for your services. However, so the only thing that you need to have is not like Django and Celery. It's not a requirement to have Django and Celery in your application. You need to have a really big logical split in your application. So you can have three of those things like API, services, serializers, something else, something else, something else. However, what I need to say to you is that that is not the best way of doing it in production. Because basically, Python already tells you that you can use modules in the logging formatters. What we can do is we can add our module. Very, very simple. What we can do is add our environment as Django or Celery, and we can dynamically change it depending on the file that we are in. We can add whatever we want, and basically for the production it's better to use just the keys, because computers, they don't, well, it's a very philosophical topic, by the way. Yeah, maybe it's a great way of using that in production. I have some projects that run with that in production, but basically it really depends on your system. So you can use either that, so splitting your logs into different files, or you can use keys, so like log record environment, Celery, log record environment, Django, log record environment, stuff like, you know, Fast API or anything else in your application. So the only idea that you need to get from that speech is that if you have a very strong logical split in your application, then don't be afraid of that, but just use different handlers and different loggers for that split, so for those different entities in your application. However, what you can do, or how you can improve, not improve, but how you can change your logging system if you don't want to use different files, is you can just simply add a dynamic key to your formatter. So environment as Celery, environment as Django, or anything else. So it's basically up to you, but what you need to once again understand is that you need to show the most descriptive ideas inside of your logs. So whenever you want to create your logging system, your logging formatter, you need to think that, okay, I'm gonna use those logs. What if an error happens in that place? What if an error happens in another place? I need to distinguish both of those places, both of those ideas, both of those maybe even like files between each other. So whenever you want to work with logs, you need to distinguish where, how, and when did that log record occurred. So thank you for watching. In the next video, we're gonna create a simple logging system, and I will show you how to bring your logs to life. So yeah, thank you for watching. My name is Andrew. Good luck and bye bye. Subscribe to my channel and leave a like. So yeah, now really good luck and bye bye. Thank you for watching.